Hey everybody, so this is a response video on a Buzzfeed article that was sent to me on here are the wildest things morticians and coroners have to deal with according to, well, morticians and coroners. I'd love to know who these morticians and coroners are that they got this information from, but let's dive in. So number one, a lot of fluids come out of the body. Yeah. Sometimes there is a lot of poop, urine, and other liquids, including fluids that escape from the mouth and nose. Yes, this does not happen with every single body. None of these things are set in stone that 100% of the time these things happen. But yes, people do urinate, defecate. They may purge. That purge may come from the lungs or the intestines. Depending on the color purge, which is stuff coming out of the nose, mouth, depending what color tells us where it's coming from inside of the person. This doesn't happen with everybody, but it can happen, especially as gases build up in the intestines. Immediately after death, that bacteria is starting to break down and starting to eat away, and it's going to create gases, creates pressure. Pressure means things are going to be pushed outwards. They are going to go to the path of least resistance, which are holes inside or outside of our body. So things are going to come out. Number two, it's easy to see body movement in decedents when you're around them a lot. So I call this one BS because I think it is absolutely the opposite. When you're around bodies a lot, you understand that bodies don't move. This is not something that happens after death. When you see bodies, when you are not around them a lot, your mind fills in that gap. So I will get emails and I'll get messages that say, I went to my grandma's funeral and I swear her chest moved, or I swear I saw her eyes move. Your body's filling in motion that it believes should be there. But when you're around bodies all the time, you understand they're not moving and you don't make up, your mind doesn't make up seeing them. So I think that's completely backwards. Number three, they don't drive hearses to pick up decedents. Actually, I know funeral homes who do still use hearses to go to homes or to hospitals to pick up the deceased. So sometimes they do. It's not as common. More often a van of some sort, a Suburban of some sort, even a SUV of some sort is used to go to the residence, to the hospital, to wherever the deceased is. Number four, sewers smell the most similar to decomposing bodies. I had to think about this one because thinking about sewers, I don't often smell sewers here, but if you go to a big city, like thinking about in Chicago, when you walk over those big vents and those big drains in the city and you get that whiff, I still don't even know that smells like a decomposing body. A decomposing body is truly its own most unique smell. I don't know that it really even smells like blood, a decomposing body. It smells like tissue rotting. It doesn't smell like blood to me. So it's interesting, that concept. Number five, sometimes there are creepy sounds. This comment says, there have been times when it sounds like people are moving around in our prep room and doors are opening and closing. That sounds like you have an issue with maybe some activity that is not the deceased at your place. So it doesn't even sound like that has anything to do with dead bodies or funerals or anything like that. That just sounds like maybe you have some paranormal activity or something if you have literally doors opening and closing. That sounds like a whole thing all on its own. Number six, turning the body over can be startling. If someone passes peacefully, like in their sleep on their back, they aren't usually turned. But when we have to turn the body over, the air that was in the lungs lets out, which makes the body exhale and makes a wind noise. So if the person has been in their body, I'm guessing this is coming from a coroner or a medical examiner investigator. In Michigan, we don't have coroners. They're medical examiner investigators who are at the homes or place of death to investigate. and they turn the body, or the EMTs or first responders have turned the person over to see if they need to do, any firsthand response, CPR or anything like that. But yes, air can be trapped in the lungs of somebody, and as you roll them and move them, they can expel some air. If it is hard enough, and if their throat and everything is in the right position, you might get a little noise. It's not very often, really, at all, but it can happen. Not all deaths are reported to a coroner. Correct. If someone dies under the care of a physician, this means in a hospital, in a nursing home, in a hospice facility, or at home under hospice care, they do not have to be reported to the medical examiner's office or to the coroner's office. Only a death that is unattended. So even if someone's at home actively dying of a disease and hospice is not there, you cannot just call the funeral home. You must call 911 and go through the process of having that person pronounced dead at your home. They may not have to go for an autopsy, but that does have to be investigated. Why did they die at home, not under medical care? So yes, not every death has to be investigated or an autopsy has to be done. Number 8, people make lots of weird requests for their dead relatives. I wouldn't say lots, but sometimes people do ask for unique things. This one says, we had a woman insist we should install microphones or audio recording equipment in the cooler where the bodies are stored, so we could hear if someone was alive. The door opens from the inside. So if they were alive, they could get out. They wouldn't be trapped in there. But who is listening to this at all times? That's my question. If we're installing this sound thing, how are we actually knowing if someone's in there talking? Who's listening to it at all times? So some of it's just like I get from fears of, they may wake up, they might not really be alive. And we've had a lot of news reports of that lately, which is wild. But no, I don't really get those questions like ever. Some are very specific requests, like this person says, my grandfather was a mortician. He told me that he had a request one time for dirt to be put in the dead guy's socks. Not just any dirt, though. Dirt from the road the guy lived on since he grew up. My grandfather honored their wish and the family was pleased. I think that's awesome. Maybe grandpa or this deceased had memories of walking down the road barefoot, and it was just that was home to him, and that was his favorite place, and he wanted to take it with him. People have been buried with like sand from beaches they love to go to, or special items. I have a whole video on things that you bury with your loved ones, so check that video out. Pacemakers need to be removed before cremation. Yep, anything with a battery needs to be removed prior to cremation because that battery will explode. We do not have to remove artificial hips or pieces of metal. Those will be recycled after the cremation process is complete. We also do not have to remove breast implants like some things say. Number 11, putting an autopsy body back together is hard work. It does take a lot more time to suture up the cranium and the Y incision. An autopsy can sometimes mean the back is opened, or the legs or the arms, depending where the trauma was incurred on the body. They may open all of that tissue as well. So it can definitely be a lot of suturing. However, I sometimes find that embalming an autopsy body can be a little easier because the vessels are all completely exposed, and we don't have to worry about some of that short-circuiting within the system with arterial buildup and things like that, because we're shooting right into the vessels. But if those vessels have been compromised, and by vessels I mean the arteries when we're injecting them, if they've been compromised by being cut in the wrong spot by the pathologist, they could actually do a lot of damage to the body, that means that we can't inject and preserve them well because we can't get to the vessels that we need to put the fluid into. So that can be a challenge. Same thing with body donors. Yes, body donors are quite the challenge when it comes to preparation. We cannot suture up some of what has been done in order to make a donation of tissue or long bones, things like that. The whole back may have this much tissue taken down to the back, and we can't suture that. We can treat the tissue and we can put plastic garments on the person. And that may be why the person has a little bit thicker looking build, is because they have to have a plastic undergarment suit on to contain any leak-in. So sometimes that can be quite a challenge, but that donation does help other individuals who are still living. Embalming deals with a lot of poop. If a decedent won't stop defecating, then we have to pack the rectum with prep towel. And if all else fails, we may even suture the anus shut. I have never in my life sutured an anus shut. So I don't know how often that ever actually happens. Yes, even with aspirating, which is using the trocar to insert into the abdomen and suck out as much fluid and fecal material as possible, you can still have leaking. As long as there is a hole, leaking can still come out of it. Embalming does not stop that all the way. And so some people do need cotton packed in the rectum. Sometimes they use an AV plug, which is it's about this big, has a little kind of a corkscrew or a screw binding on the outside that you put it into the rectum or the vaginal area if there is leaking. I have never used one in my whole career. Some people use them all the time. Just depends on the embalmer and depends on the situation. A lot of bodies are transported in cargo vans. Yes, as I said earlier, vans are used a lot. Large vans are used often in big cities, especially where they can carry 2 individuals on 2 cots at a time. You go to the hospital, you may have to pick up 2 individuals or carry 2 boxes to go to the crematory, things like that. So you can carry more. These are also multi-purpose, where you use them for flowers or for, whatever other items you may need transported at the funeral home. So they're multi-purpose vehicles. Number 15, being a mortician takes a strong stomach and a good therapist. I don't know if strong stomach is the word. I think cleaning drains is one of the grossest things that ever. It gags me, can't even. I also gag when people drink the milk out of their cereal, but I am an embalmer. So I don't know that strong stomach. I think it's that our responses to things are different. And the people that have better, lesser response to bodily fluids and certain smells work best as embalmers. It doesn't mean we have strong stomachs. If I'm gagging at cereal milk, then I don't think my stomach's very strong for that. I think it's just we're all geared towards different things. And yes, we do need good therapists. We need people who help mentally help us through hard days, help us to deal with things we may see or situations that we are part of at the funeral home. And lastly, it's a lot more work than the public thinks. Hell yes. I think the majority of public sees about 20% of what we do as funeral directors. You don't want to sit and watch me have to make phone calls for 2 hours setting up one funeral. That's not something I think that's going to interest you. Calling 6 different insurance companies to help a family. Not something exciting or interesting, but it's part of what we do. So there's a lot that we do that's not super fascinating. It's not gory. It's not, something you would want to read a book about or watch a movie about. It's just the everyday business operations of what it takes to have a funeral happen. It's a lot of work, and it's not always interesting, but it's a lot of things that you as the public may not see. So these are 16 things on BuzzFeed's article about here are the wildest things morticians and coroners have to deal with, according to, well, Morticians and Coroners. So this is from 2020 and was sent to me by a viewer, and that is my kind of response as we read through them. Thank you guys for joining. If you have other articles or videos you want me to comment on, send them my way at Kari@KariTheMortician.com.